a full evening tonight. Welcome everyone to the May meeting of the Forsyth County Amateur Radio Club. My name is Sam Poindexter, NI4TG. We've got about 40 people in here so far, and that's good. Wanted to welcome all the new folks tonight. I see Dan, K04CTR, David, WB0QOA. And I'd like to recognize Nicole Cullison, who tested Saturday and got her technician license. So if everybody will give Nicole a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Had a few announcements this evening. First of all, I wanted to thank all the members who took a couple of minutes or so and filled out the survey that we sent out. We'll be presenting the results. We're still going through that. We'll be presenting results first to the board of directors this Monday, and then we'll be presenting the results to the club. We had about 80 responses, and you told us how you feel, and change is coming. The majority of the club wants certain things, and that's what we're going to do. Also like to recognize Stacy and Mason and Harold tonight, who represented the club at the recent science fair. They had, I guess if you don't know about that, if you'll read the newsletter, there's some photos in there. They represented the club at the science fair. Also, the Federal Communications Commission has created new RF exposure guidelines, and you'll be needing to do an exposure calculation on your station. There's some help on the website, w4nc.com, help you work through that. Also at the June meeting, we'll have a short presentation from Don Edwards on CW, and then we'll be doing field day planning. There is some concern about field day. Field day will certainly look different than it has in the past. And of course, things are still changing. This is a voluntary activity. A lot of people have expressed their desire to participate, but it is voluntary, and you can participate in field day from home if you like. At this time, Kent, would you give us please a finance report?
Okay, thank you, Sam. As of this afternoon, our balance in the bank is $4,976.65. So we're in fairly good shape right now. At this point, we don't have a lot of money coming in as far as dues, but then there's not a whole lot going out. Our next big expense in June will be probably $800-900 for our annual insurance payment, both liability and equipment insurance. That's about it.
Thank you, Kent. Anyone have any questions for Kent? Okay. And now we'll get a repeater and a testing report from Dale.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening, everybody. I'll try to keep a little bit short. Had the pleasure of having a root canal earlier today, so not feeling real well. But for testing, we did have the Saturday session on May 5th. It was planned. It was a perfect day in terms of weather. You couldn't ask for anything better, except maybe a little more pollen. Hi. We out of the 12 slots available, we had 3 exam candidates, all of which had passed their exams. And I saw 2 of them on the here today. Sam congratulated Nicole. Congratulations, Nicole. Look forward to seeing you on the air. And Mark Stone. Congratulations to Mark for upgrading to his extra. So when you see them, you may want to tell them congratulations on the air. Yeah, let's do it. Thanks, Sam. Okay, looking good, Bob. And this wouldn't be possible unless it was for a number of folks, mainly WA3RTC for making the site available. Thank you, Steve. And KC4X for bird dogging and getting everything coordinated. And then last not least, we had all the VEs that made it possible. Mike Vernon, Crystal Austin, a new VE. We mentioned David Schoaf, Don Edwards. Thanks for being there, Don. Sam, thank you for being there. And we had Stacy and Ian. Stacy brought a new ham kit, professionally done. First time I saw it, and we gave it to the new hams. So hopefully they'll be able to put that to good use. And before I leave testing or ask for questions, I just wanted to put a small tickler out there after the meeting. Those that are going to stay around, I appreciate if you could. Don't want to put you on the spot, Mark Stone, but Mark may have some questions. He's looking at different facets of ham radio, and I could be wrong, but I think some of you may have some ideas how to guide them in CW, in digital, in satellite, repeaters, all that good stuff. So if you get a chance to stick around and help out Mark, that'd be appreciated. Before I go to testing, are there any questions on, before I go to repeaters, are there any questions on testing? Okay, I'll move on to the repeaters. We still experiencing some interference up on Sourtown Mountain, but thanks to Don Edwards with the spectrum analyzer and the additional cavity up there to null out one of the major signals, that helped a lot. So thank you, Don. I've since gone ahead and gotten some new double shielded cables that'll further minimize interference. I'm going to put those on there at on our next trip, and we'll also upgrade some other items. And I'm going to take a look at the Kenwood repeater PL circuits. I've seen evidence remotely, they are just not working right. So we may have to put in a standby repeater and take that unit down, take a look at it, make sure everything's fine, and then put it back in there again. For Wake Forest, time has passed since we've been able to talk to Wake Forest last fall, mainly because I had surgeries, I couldn't get out. But I've made up a plan how we could address getting access back to our repeaters at the hospital. And I'll produce an executive summary, and before the next meeting, talk to Ken Bishop at the hospital or the current contacts and see how we can get that in place to get up there to see what we have from a safety and technical point of view, and then schedule a second trip to implement changes like to fix tower buckles, put new cables on, that sort of thing. So thanks for your patience and bearing with us. Okay, any questions on the repeaters?
Dale, touch
Yes,
base
sir.
with me. Touch base with me with regards to Wake.
Okay,
would.
I'll do that. Thank you, Harlan. I appreciate it.
I've got some input for you and some changes that are occurring there.
Great, they'll be welcome. Thank you,
All right.
Harlan. Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much, folks. Back to you, Sam.
Okay, thank you, Dale. It's good to be testing again. Last month we had we tried something new. We had a 10-minute small session about Amazon Smile, and in having some discussion, the board decided that a 10-minute segment on covering basic ham operations each meeting might be something worthwhile to do. So tonight, for the first in this series, Terry Brown, AK4D, has a 10-minute program containing some suggestions for newly licensed hams and I think some programming information. Terry, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Harold is going to show the video that I made, and on programming, the computer program that I'm going to reference is Chirp, free for the download. And I have successfully programmed 10 different radios using Chirp. Never had really any problem with it. So you'll see that right at the end of the video. So Harold, are you ready? Good evening. Sam, NI4TG, recently asked me to do a short program focusing on the needs of newly licensed or recently licensed hams. I'm Terry, AK4D, but first I'd like to say congratulations to all of you who have recently gotten your first amateur radio license. Well, big questions come up when you get your license. Now, what do I do? What equipment do I need? Where do I turn to for help? Well, if you're hearing this, you are at one of the best sources of information and help, the Forsyth Amateur Radio Club. Club members have a lot of knowledge and have been enjoying ham radio literally for decades, me included. And we wish to share that knowledge and expand the hobby. Well, a major emphasis of the club is helping the beginning amateur radio operator with equipment, antennas, techniques, installation, etc. But you know, best of all, we try to have a lot of fun in doing what we do, a lot of camaraderie.
Outside the club, there are a lot of online resources, amateur radio websites, YouTube videos, etc., etc. But one great source of info and news really needs highlighting. It's the American Radio Relay League, or the ARRL, which has many benefits for all levels of amateur radio. A very helpful online ARRL resource is the On the Air magazine, which started being published both in paper and digital format last year in 2020. Currently there are 8 issues available for ARRL members. On the Air magazine targets the technician license holder, but also has a lot of refresher info for all license holders and experience levels. Let's check out some of the most recent articles in On the Air magazine. Buying your first handheld radio, repeaters, demystifying repeater tones, having a successful QSO on the repeater, going into some things like obeying a courtesy beep, breaking in the right way, how to deal with doubling, standby for repeater ID, getting in and out of a QSO, and most importantly, brevity many times is the soul of wit. Factors to consider in purchasing a mobile radio. Then a lot of definite factors in installing the radio in your vehicle, some definite do's and do nots. Then some great articles on public service. Here's a great article on coax connectors, including the infamous PL259 connector, which is still a mystery to me, and getting that installed correctly on a piece of coax. Crimp connectors. Factors to consider in buying an HF radio. A good description of all the sorts of antennas with pictures, and then figuring out which antenna is the one that you really need for your particular purpose. How to construct a ground plane antenna for your handheld. Good articles on antenna gain, antenna polarity, antenna tuners. How to correctly use an antenna tuner, reducing interference, all about standing wave ratio, calling CQ, and then upgrading from your technician to a general license. Technician license holders have a lot of privileges on the VHF and UHF bands. But never forget that you have single sideband voice and data privileges on the 10 meter band, Morse code or CW privileges on the 15, 40, and 80 meter bands. Of course, Morse code or CW is a great talent to learn and is very helpful and an essential capability for field day, with 3 points for each CW contact. I encourage all of you to continue upgrading your license from technician to general or extra. It opens up the world and a lot of opportunities in using ham radio. One final item. I've had 2 requests over the past, say, couple of months on how to program your handheld. One option that I've used very successfully in the past is a program called Chirp. Here's the Chirp web address, chirp.danplanet.com, and a photo or snapshot of the website. Chirp capability is fairly large. It can program up to 54 different brands of radios and close to 360 different models of radios. Chirp is available without charge from the website. Chirp can program many models of Baofangs, Kenwoods, ICOMs, Yaesus, and Woosons. The first item of business after connecting the radio to your computer is to download the memory contents of the radio into the Chirp program, even if you have not inserted anything into the radio memory. And then this process has been fairly straightforward based upon my previous uses of the Chirp program. Chirp will really prompt you on what to do. Okay, I have downloaded the base status of the Yaesu FT70DR handheld, and all the memory locations are empty. So let's start filling some of those in. Let's go radio, open data source, repeater book, political query, and then you can go into any state in the United States. Here, of course, I've chosen North Carolina, and just for counties, I just chose New Hanover County, where I lived for 30 years. And for bands, you can do all the bands, 10 meter, 6 meter, 2 meter on up, or you can be specific. So we'll stick with the 2 meters. We'll say OK, and then you see a new tab being opened up. Click on that tab for repeater locations. Let's highlight all 4 of those. We'll go over to edit and copy, go back to our base tab, highlight the first memory location, and then do an edit and paste. And you'll see those 4 locations have been moved into the file for the memories to be uploaded back to your radio. Let's go back. Let's do that one more time. Query data source, repeater book, political query, and let's choose a different county this time, and just for kicks, let's do Wilkes County. And you'll see a 3rd tab being opened up with the repeaters for Wilkes County. We'll highlight all 5 of those, edit, copy, go back to our first tab, go to the first available memory location, highlight that, edit, paste, and you can see all 4 of those are now added into that. Now you can go into each one of these, you can swap them around, you can change the name, because that name will be appearing on the screen of the radio. There's so much capability, and you can build a file very, very quickly. Another way of putting information into Chirp to be uploaded to your radio is to hand edit every memory location, putting in the frequency, the name, the tone, the offset, the amount of power, etc., etc. A few weeks ago, I developed a very detailed set of instructions for programming a Yaesu FT70DR handheld radio with Chirp. Very detailed instructions. And I'd be very happy to get a copy of those to you if you have that radio. Of course, Chirp will program so many different radios, and every radio has its own procedure or quirks in getting it programmed.
Sam, one
Yes.
correction to what I stated there. Field A, I think it's 2 points for the CW contacts, not 3.
Okay. I'd point out too that in that Chirp program, if you when you go to repeater book, and instead of looking at political, there's another option. I don't remember the name, but you can pull up different cities within North Carolina or any other state. You can pull up repeaters by city or whatever. I wanted to mention too that tonight's meeting is being recorded. It'll be posted on YouTube. That can be accessed via the W4NC website. So if you want to go back through this and refer to it again, you can go online and view it all you want to. And I had a question, Terry. All the information that was presented, that was mainly in the On the Air magazine. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that was just some articles from the 8 issues that are available right now. And there may be one more now, but it's published every other month. But it's a neat little magazine.
Sure looks like it's clear and concise to me. Anybody else have any questions for Terry?
And Sam, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say that I utilized all that Terry has developed there with the downloading of the chirp, and especially putting it on that FT70, which is I'm a beginner, I'm a tech, and that was my introductory radio that I have, and getting that set up and going. And I just want to say, I can't thank Terry enough for his help and the great instructions he put together and files for getting me up and started with that. So if anybody has that radio and in addition wants to download that chirp program to their radio, it's a great tool. So thank you, Terry.
You're very welcome. And I will put that instruction sheet for the FT70DR on the website.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you, Terry. That was great. I guess you noticed we did not have an update from Harlan tonight. That's because Harlan is the presenter, and Harlan can give us his update during the presentation, I'm sure. So at this time, Harlan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sam. Hope everybody can hear me. Let me see if I can get this presented. And go to full screen mode. Okay, everybody can see that?
Yes.
Can you hear me? All right. Real quick, before we get into the future of emergency communications, the update on Oxcom here in the county is, again, just reminding everybody that we have the net Thursday night at 8:30 on the W4NC 145.470 repeater. And we will next week be having a Zoom training session where we will be starting to go through ICS forms. And we will ultimately, throughout the rest of the year, cover every ICS form that we will, at some point in time, most likely be asked to deal with, even possibly develop, et cetera. So we're going to try to walk through that training a little bit at a time as we go forward. Tour to Tanglewood is coming up. Right now, there are plans for it to be in person this year again, which will be good. We're finally going to be able to do that. That's the 25th and 26th of September out at Tanglewood Park. So please put that on your calendars. Right now, their initial feedback that Bike MS is getting looks to be a fairly large event. A lot of people are excited about it and wanting to get out and ride. And so we anticipate having a good ride. So with that being said, that's pretty much the update. So let's talk about the future of emergency communications, if I can get this to work right. Did that transition?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes it doesn't. I just want to make sure. Amateur radio has a very robust history of emergency communications. Starting back early 1914, actually, through about 1935, this was handled by individuals or even ad hoc groups on an as needed basis. Kind of, they just did their own thing. They really didn't have any true organization or any real relationships with anybody but maybe just the local community that they lived in, the town that they lived in, that type of thing. In 1935, essentially is when amateur radio really kind of got formalized into emergency communications with what was called the Amateur Radio Emergency Corps. In some locations, it was actually called the Public Service Corps. And this started after 1931, after the Napier earthquake in New Zealand, when they realized that communications, especially in more remote areas, was really needed and was really lacking. And so amateur radio got together, kind of formalized things, and it kind of took off. Started in New Zealand and went international. In 1980, ARRL created the Amateur Radio Emergency Services, ARES, and they put an emphasis on public service communications support to served agencies. Primarily, initially, it was the American Red Cross, and then it started with state and local emergency managements and FEMAs. And so it's migrated a little bit over the years. Amateur radio emergency communications has always been mission oriented, but change driven. Our mission has always been, as a group, to provide communication support during emergencies, disasters, public service events, things of that nature. And it's been driven by whatever change occurred, be it a need for a new communications type, be it something that's new on the horizon that's available, being the served agency's need, or even technology changes. As we went from CW to voice, that became a primary mode because it was a little quicker. When we started getting digital communications capabilities and going away from tube sets to transistored or solid state sets, those things drove some of the changes that occurred in emergency communications. World War II changed how we live. We went to war, we had rationing, changed a lot of things, but it also changed things for amateur radio. And that is, at the end of World War II, it gave us a ton of equipment to pick from. There's a lot of surplus equipment, so it really kind of expanded amateur radio and what it could do. 9/11/2001 was another change to our lives here in the United States and to amateur radio ultimately. After 9/11 occurred, there was a lot of after action reports and reviews done. Out of them, 3 basic issues with the response arose: communications, coordination, and common terminology. What was happening was during the response, they had agencies going into New York from 3 different states, several hundred jurisdictions, and not anybody used the same frequencies, used the same types of frequencies or radios, used the same types of coordination or command structures, or used even the same terminology. Some used their own homebrewed set of 10 codes. Some used the national ones. Some used signals instead of 10 codes. It was really a messed up response in the end when they looked at it. So out of that came what's called Presidential Homeland Security Directive 5. It mandated the creation of the National Incident Management System. It further mandated that federal agencies adopt NIMS and use it for their incident response. Homeland Security also mandated that all state and local offices of emergency management adopt the program as well. That's your incident command, your ICS is what we basically call that. Another thing that occurred, the Department of Homeland Security developed a NIMS compliant, a program that follows the ICS processes and principles called Auxiliary Communications Program. And in that, they basically took everything that was non-public safety communications related and mashed it all together. Amateur Radio Emergency Services, MARS, RACES, CERT Response Team Communications, REACT. If it wasn't public safety, meaning fire, EMS, or law enforcement, it went into this bucket. So the impact following that was that amateur radio, their clubs, ARES groups, started to have to adopt and implement the incident command system processes and become NIMS compliant. There have been several, and there still are several, including some here in the state, that have resisted the change. And they have found themselves to no longer be part of their state or local emergency management's planning and have essentially become irrelevant to their communities in the way of emergency communications or public service communications. Unfortunately, ARRL, the ARES program, has not kept up with this needed change. It's yet to mandate NIMS compliance, and so it is not considered a NIMS compliant program. And as a result, numerous states no longer recognize ARES or include it in their planning because it does not mesh with what their structure is and what it has to be. North Carolina, the Department of Public Safety, they extended a national mandate. They mandated that all fire, EMS, and law enforcement agencies in the state adopt NIMS into their operations and planning. To further that, the North Carolina Office of Emergency Management mandated that all organizations who respond to or assist at any level in emergency disaster response or public service type events where we use state or interface with local public safety organizations or assets, we also have to be NIMS compliant. So that was a huge change. And we've seen this, we knew this was coming. Earlier this year, we had a conference call with what we call the SWIC. It's a short term for a long name. It's the Statewide Interoperability Coordinator. During this call, he presented to all of the OXCOM coordinators in the state a lot of information about how State EM and Department of Public Safety looks at amateur radio. He reiterated that all response organizations have to be NIMS compliant. He also stated that as far as the state is concerned, OXCOM is the only program that amateur radio is involved in that meets the standard. And in the state's planning, they no longer recognize ARES or the National Traffic System, NTS, both of which are ARRL programs. He specifically said they're not recognized because they're not NIMS compliant, therefore we cannot use them because they do not meet our mandates. But he went on further to state something that I found personally to be extremely complimentary of amateur radio in the state of North Carolina. Remember that ARES has always been set up in the past as a secondary communications resource. It's a backup, what people used to say and like to say, when all else fails, ARES is there. That's no longer the case, especially here in the state of North Carolina. OXCOM is a primary communications resource and is a professional one. He further stated that as far as North Carolina Office of Emergency Management is concerned, amateur radio operators are just as professional as any public safety communications leader, communications technician, tactical dispatcher, or radio operator, meaning the person who dispatches that call locally for a police car or for a fire truck or ambulance. You are just as professional in the eyes of OEM as they are. That's a big thing. That's a huge statement to be made because that's not been the way amateur radio historically has been looked at. So that's a huge change in North Carolina. He further stated, for those of you that have gone through the ICS courses, if you remember correctly, the communications unit always has fallen under the logistics section as a support unit. It supported the mission. That's changed in North Carolina. Now communications is not only a standalone unit, but it's a primary branch under the operations section. So it's moved from logistics to operations, and it's been made its own branch, its own standalone unit. That's huge. That's a big step. He also stated, and I found this to be, again, very interesting, that under the new plans, that the communications branch will be among the first to deploy whenever there's a deployment in regards to an emergency, a large-scale emergency or disaster, or even a large-scale public service event. The communications branch will be among the first to deploy, and Oxcom will be part of that deployment. Not if we need you, not as an afterthought, not later. It was Oxcom will be part of that deployment. Anybody realize that during the DNC, when they were in Charlotte, and the RNC from last year, that Oxcom amateur radio actually played a very significant communications role in those events? That's not a disaster. That's not well, it could have been, but it was a public service event, large scale. Oxcom was there. Amateur radio was there to play a huge role. So the Oxcom program within the state is fully compliant with NIMS. And the changes that were made within the program now have the leadership structure mirroring that of emergency management. We have, and I'll show you a graphic here in a minute. What this does now is it allows an easier integration into state and local planning and local operations. The Oxcom coordinators are designated by the state. Deputy coordinators are designated by the local coordinators with state concurrence. In addition, we now have a standardized certification and credentialing methodology for folks that are being certified in Oxcom. Some other key elements of North Carolina Oxcom is that is now the official designation within the state for all amateur radio emergency communications and public service activities. It's now Oxcom. And North Carolina has spent several years. It's actually been about 3 years in the making. And we've seen it coming. We know it was going to come. But it's now a model that many states are adopting. It's so far been adopted, as I understand, by 5 states and fully, and is being adopted by more and more. So it's a new way of doing business. Currently in the state, we have 80 amateurs as of April 1st that completed either the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, or the North Carolina State's Oxcom course. That's a 5-day course in class with an exercise at the end of it program. And we've had 5 of the 80 that have completed the actual Oxcom position task book. And that's a whole nother topic there, but it's a book that contains a bunch of tasks that you got to complete to show you know what you're doing. There's about 24 that are waiting final approval so far here in the county. We've had a total of 4 members, 3 that took the state course. However, they have not completed the task book. And we have 1 member that took the DHS course and is grandfathered under the DHS course. So this is what the new state structure looks like. We have a state Oxcom coordinator along with a deputy. I just kept the deputies out of here for clarity. But we have 3 OEM branches, and we have 3 Oxcom coordinators, 1 per branch along with a deputy. Then each county is being assigned an Oxcom coordinator, and those are usually people from a local club or clubs but it's somebody that is experienced in emergency communications, is willing to do the job, and does have hopefully a relationship with the local EM, or has the ability to establish that relationship. And then under the county Oxcom coordinators would be the deputy coordinators. So the end result of the change, where are we going with all this? Well, I hate to tell you, but it's got new and enhanced training requirements. But as a result of that, we've got enhanced missions, the opportunity for more and different types of missions. And the best thing is better visibility, because the more we're active, the more we do, the more we're able to do for these public safety and public service missions, the better visibility amateur radio has. And when people start seeing this, what's one of the good benefits we see is people wanting to become amateur radio operators. So to me, it looks like a positive, although there are some new things we got to jump through, some new hoops. But in the end, it could be very beneficial to us as a group. So what's this mean? Well, we're starting. All right, cue the kicking and screaming, folks. We're starting from scratch for ecom. Well, sort of, almost. The good news is Forsyth Amateur Radio Club, Forsyth Oxcom, we're actually ahead of this power curve, because we have spent the last 2 years migrating our local program to NIMS compliance. We've already been doing a lot of the footwork because we've seen it coming. You guys have seen it coming. So you've been taking the training. A lot of you have completed the basic 4 ICS courses. A lot of you have taken the Ecom 101 course and the Net Controller course. Many of you have gotten certified in WebEOC, which is what emergency management uses for internal communications during emergencies and retention of information. You know, it's how we manage the event is through WebEOC. To give you a real quick idea of how WebEOC was used with the pandemic last year, for the first time in Forsyth County's history, we did a full level 1. We went to level 1 activation, which is a full EOC activation. First time Forsyth County's ever been there. We did it remotely. We did it all through WebEOC. You know, over 300 people involved in the EOC, and we managed it all through that program remotely for a year and going. So folks that have had that certification or have that certification know how to use it and gain into it. The thing is, folks, we're still not there. In 2016, we had 76 members on the Aries roster for Forsyth County. And that should have said 2017. But in 17, it dropped to 60. In 18, it dropped down as the ICS requirements came in. It dropped down to 51. Today, I've got 47 stations that I have a current Oxcom or Aries, former Aries registration for. People that I do have documentation on. But only 16 of those meet the current training requirements for ICS. And unfortunately, we do have to meet that. It is a state mandate that we have the basic 4 courses up to the most current level. So if you took any of your ICS courses before 2018, I hate to tell you, you got to take them again. And that's just a mandate. And the reason is there has been changes. So when it comes to training, and I've said this before, and I can't emphasize this enough, amateurs train to get it right. And we consider, hey, we got it right. We don't have to go any further. Professionals train until they don't get it wrong. A big difference in training. Because in order to train till you don't get it wrong, it's repetitive. You got to do it over and over and over again. How did you learn CW? Repetition. You did it till you don't get it wrong. That's how you learn CW. It's the same way with emergency communications. So most of you have signed up in terms, what's called NC terms. If you don't know what that is, it's a huge long acronym. Just Google it or use it in whatever Safari or whatever it is on Apple, and it will come up. Register yourself there, and you can set yourself up to get alerts on different courses that come available that you may be able to take. Some of these courses are restricted, however, they might be law enforcement sensitive courses or specific to a specific group. But for the most part, once you're on Oxcom, you're able to take any of the training you want. Right now, for the Oxcom course, which is a 4-day course with a 1-day exercise, the state has funding for 3 of those courses this year. And as soon as classroom training is unrestricted and we're allowed to go back into classroom training, we can have those courses anywhere we want. And I have been told that if we would like to have Forsyth County EM sponsor one, we can make that request, and they are willing to send the state the request and hopefully get it approved for here. But we do have to have people that are willing to take it. Additionally, there's a WinLink certification. WinLink is our primary digital mode for the state of North Carolina. And this particular one is going to come up. It's a certification course and is a 3-month self-paced mentored course that you can take. It's up to you. It's voluntary, but we encourage you to take it. Well, one thing that is coming up, and we know this will happen, we anticipate here in the next couple of months, if not the next conference call, being told this is now mandated. And that is that people are going to be required to take the Department of Defense Operational Security OPSEC training course. It's about an hour long. It's very simple. The Oxcom staff here in the county have taken it and are current in the course. And I've actually had a couple of folks that have also taken it that are members. It's pretty simple. So I'm encouraging folks to start taking some of this stuff. A lot of it's online, so you can do it at your own pace. You don't have to sit in a classroom. The 4 ICS courses are all online. They take about an hour or about 2.5 to 3 hours per course, depending on how quick you get through it. If you know the material, try taking the test. If you pass it, you're done. And you've got a new certificate. Otherwise, you have to retake the course. And I know it seems like a pain, but it's something we've just kind of bite the bullet on and do. Take the DoD OPSEC course. Okay, we've got to do it. Why wait? Let's just go ahead and bite the bullet, guys. A couple other things that they changed on us. And this is more towards me as the Oxcom coordinator and the staff, but we now have to provide them with 2 weeks advance notice, the state, of all training, exercise, and public service events. Not our nets, not our Zoom meetings, but like when we do the basic MCOM 101 course or the NCS course, or if we do an exercise other than during our nets or during the Zoom training, we have to let them know. If we do, bike MS or any other similar events, we got to give them 2-week notice. The reason for this is, one, we may have additional personnel throughout the state that want to participate, because for their position task books that people are completing, they have to do some of these events. Secondly, state assets may become available to us. One we're working on right now, for example, that we identified last year, is that in the area that we get put for the command post at Tanglewood, cellular coverage is almost non-existent. But we need cellular coverage and all at the command post, because we have certain things that have to be called in by phone, can't be called in by radio, things like that. And without the cellular system, it's kind of a hampering for not only us, but for the sheriff's department. So we are working with the state, and we are probably going to end up with having a either Verizon or somebody will provide us with a cellular extender, or potentially what's called a CAL, which is a cellular on wheels for the event, so that we have that communications. Why we can get this is because our program is NIMS compliant. If we were not NIMS compliant under the Oxcom program, we would not be able to get these resources. The resource we use for the command post comes out of the state medical assistance team warehouse, the SMAT team. That is a North Carolina state asset. So to get that, we've got to make a request from OEM. And we've gotten it every year. So some of the other changes that this is unfortunately driven upon us, because ARES is not a NIMS compliant program, and under the state mandate, everything is now Oxcom. We've had to change a lot of our documentation and so forth. So we end up pulling ARES information away from the documentation. That's being done. We don't use the ARES term anymore, and we do not wear the ARES apparel during Oxcom operations. So effective April 15th, we dropped the ARES out of our name. We're now just strictly Forsyth County Oxcom. All of our documentation is being corrected for that. We still have the logo and stickers, however, the patches and stickers. We're permitted to use those till the end of the stock. Our current ID badges, most of them are up for renewal this year, and they will have the new logo and the new name on them and be reissued upon expiration. So we don't have to do a big bite at one time. Here's what our staff now looks like, and the way it's formed. Under the ICS principles, you have what's called your command staff. That's always going to will be your incident commander, in this case, Oxcom coordinator, the deputy public information and safety officer. Off of that is our support group. That would be Dale, which is our technical services manager. And then we have our general staff, which is our deputy commander of operations, or deputy Oxcom coordinator operations, which is Stacy. And we're looking for a deputy Oxcom coordinator of logistics and training. And then we have a branch manager, currently David Nicholson, for West operations. We're looking for somebody for East operations to fill out the staff. So folks, we're in exciting times. The trailer you're looking at, that picture you're seeing, while it does have the ARES sticker on there because it was bought, this is actually in another state adjoining us, but these are being looked at, and several counties are making grant requests for them. We have the possibility, if we can show the county that we have a good group and are able to respond. This trailer is a professionally built trailer for this county's group. As you see, it says emergency management on it. And it says, it'll have a logo. It won't have ARES on it. It'll have probably the North Carolina Oxcom logo on it, or ours. And it'll say emergency communications, look just like that, but it'll be equipped for amateur operations, interfacing with them. It'll belong to the county, but exclusive use by us. That would be really nice to take. Think about having that at field day, or at any time we go out to do some sort of activity, no matter where it is in the state, we can take that with us. This particular one is also on their state and county radio system as MCOM1. That's their official call sign. So if the county is dispatching for a disaster, they'll dispatch MCOM1, and amateur radio responds and drives that out and sets it up. So it's exciting times. So folks, we're positioned. we actually have ourselves well positioned because we started moving forward 2 years ago. We've made a big chunk of this already occur. But we do have a decision to make individually, and I think as a county. And that is, do we want to accept the change, do the training that's needed and stay relevant and effective? Or if we decide to do nothing, become irrelevant in the future. That's kind of the decision we have to make. And it's up to us individually and jointly as to where we're going to go. I will say that as the Oxcom coordinator, that I appreciate the support that Forsyth Amateur Radio Club and its membership have provided the Oxcom Aries in the past. And I hope that that same support and enthusiasm will continue for Oxcom in the future as we move forward. I will tell you, we have one of the strongest relationships with emergency management in the county that we have ever had. This is one of the reasons that the county isolated a room in the EOC for us, set strictly up for our communication system, ran antennas for us, did everything we needed to be able to roll in there, set up, and operate for them. You know, they knew this was coming. We knew this was coming. So this has been the push. I hope we continue to support the county. I anticipate us having additional missions for the county as they go into opening things back up. I will tell you that there's been rumors out there that Oxcom was real big in certain counties during the pandemic for various reasons. And the answer to that is no, it wasn't. There wasn't an Oxcom unit anywhere in the state of North Carolina that was activated for the pandemic. And the reason was, it wasn't a communications emergency. We didn't need communications. We needed medication. We needed masks. We needed other things, but we didn't need communications. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. If anybody has any, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
I got a question for you,
Okay, who's this?
Michael.
Mike, okay.
Did you say all the training prior to 2018 had to be redone?
If you took ICS, if you look on our website, on the W4NC website under training for Oxcom, that tab, if you took any of the ICS courses, 1, 2, 700, and 800, prior to 2018, they've all been changed since. They now all have alpha designations. If you don't have that designation on your certificate, you will have to take it again. What that is for 100, it would be 100C as in Charlie, 200C as in Charlie, 700B as in Bravo, and 800D as in Delta. So those are the current courses, and those are the level you would have to be at. I will tell you that there has been a change to all 4, which is why they've got new designations to them.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Harlan, this is Nicole.
Yes, ma'am.
So I've got a couple. I'll try to make them brief. I've got to redo my ICS courses for the hospital, but I'm also on the SMAT 2 team. If I take those courses, will you be able to see them in terms? Because I am registered in terms.
When you take them, Nicole, and this is for everybody, once you've taken the course, you do not have to send me the certificate for each one of them. If at the end you send me a copy of your transcript, that's all I need. And you can pull your transcript down at any point in time. It'll come down in a PDF format, and just email it to the oxcom@w4nc.com email address.
Okay. And then since I am on the medical aspect of SMAT, would there ever be any reason for me? Like, should I still pursue this down the road if I'm interested, or because I'm on medical,
I
kinda-
encourage you to also pursue Oxcom, and the reason is that there will be more and more interfacing as we go forward. As I said, that there's a lot of times that systems will go down. We've had Viper towers in the state that have gone down for various reasons. And when that happens, the radios that SMAT uses are on the Viper system.
Mhm.
When that tower goes down, you're not communicating. If you've got amateur radio with you, you're still communicating.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, Sam, I kept it to about 45 minutes.
Well, you did good, Harlan. Thank you.
So I will stop sharing.
That was a good explanation, I thought, of how we got here. And I wanted to share a screen. I know if I can do this. As you sit here and you think about this, and tomorrow you're trying to figure something out. I know some of this for new folks may not be as clear cut as it is for some of us who have been around for a while. If you go to the website W4NC, and on the left side you click on club officers and leaders, what comes up here is the email address. If you have a question about Oxcom tomorrow, just email Harlan at oxcom@w4nc.com. If you have a question for Terry, who gave a presentation tonight, he's the webmaster, Terry Brown, AK4D. His email is webmaster@w4nc.com. And Harlan, if you'll make sure your mailbox is not full, someone may email you, but at any rate, I just wanted to show everybody, if you come up, tomorrow and you have a question about anything that was discussed tonight, you can just contact anyone on here that you're comfortable with. You can contact me anytime. If I cannot answer your question, I will certainly be able to refer you to someone who can. Is there anything else tonight? Does anyone have anything else for the meeting? Okay. I did want to remind everybody the business meeting is next Monday night at 7:30. Also, after tonight's meeting, when we close the meeting, we'll have an informal discussion. As long as you want to talk. If you want to sit here till midnight and talk, some do. I'll be around for a while, but if you have any questions, you can ask them then, or if you just want to shoot the breeze or whatever you want to talk about, we'll have an informal discussion after the meeting. Are we sure there's nothing else? Do I hear a motion to close?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, a second. Got a second from Harlan. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.